Let's be honest, the spiritual awakening they sold you is a beautifully packaged lie. They promised you bliss, purpose, and cosmic secrets. Instead, you woke up in a silent, grey wasteland, a personal purgatory of apathy where your old ambitions turn to dust. You're not enlightened, you feel broken, and you're starting to think this was all a huge mistake. This is the great unspoken truth of awakening, the point where most people get stuck and quietly give up. But what if this broken feeling is actually the beginning of real power? What if this death of your old self is the price of admission to true freedom? Don't you dare turn back now, because I'm about to show you that this wasteland you're in is actually the most sacred ground you will ever walk. You went through a massive transformation, a spiritual awakening, and now what? You expected to feel clarity, an unshakable purpose, fireworks in your soul. But instead, what you might be feeling is a deafening silence, a deep and strangely calm emptiness. This feeling can be incredibly disorienting, making you wonder if you did something wrong or missed a crucial part of the process. This calm isn't the serene peace the books promise, at least not at first. It's more like the dense, still air after a hurricane has passed and devastated the landscape. The noise has stopped, the destruction is over, but the resulting quiet is almost more terrifying. What was once your identity, your worries, your desires? It all seems to have been swept away, leaving behind a vast and unfamiliar space. This void you feel is actually the absence of the constant noise of your former self. It's the lack of that incessant voice that dictated your ambitions, your fears, and your social obligations. The silence feels strange because you grew accustomed to living in the middle of the noise. Now, without that mental static, you are left face to face with a stillness that demands a new kind of listening, a new way of being. It is crucial to understand this. This feeling is not despair, nor is it a sign of failure. On the contrary, it represents a kind of sacred exhaustion. Think of it as the deep and necessary rest your being takes after a long and arduous journey of deconstruction. Your soul is finally taking a deep breath, releasing the weight of an identity that no longer served you, and that process consumes a lot of energy. This state of suspension, of disorienting calm, is the first real step into your new world. It is the fertile ground where a new perception of yourself will begin to sprout, organically and truthfully. But before the seed can germinate, you must honor the soil, understand this emptiness. This is where many get confused, questioning if what they feel is a sacred calling or simply apathy. And in all this silence, the most frightening question arises: have I become apathetic? Have I lost my passion for life? You look in the mirror and perhaps don't recognize the person who was once so full of grit and ambition. The goals that once moved you now seem distant and meaningless. This is a dangerous feeling, because our culture teaches us that to stop is to fail, that not having a clear goal is the same as being lost. Here is the crucial distinction that can change everything. For you, what you are feeling is likely not apathy, but a sacred pause. Apathy is a state of total indifference, a void of feeling. The sacred pause, on the other hand, is a state of selective emptying. You haven't stopped caring about everything. You've stopped caring about the things that were never genuinely yours. To begin with, think of all the forces that moved you before. The need to please, the search for external validation, the pressure to follow a social script of success. The spiritual awakening acts like a light that exposes the falsehood of these motivations. Your system simply refuses to continue operating on these artificial fuels. It's not that you no longer want to act, it's that you no longer want to perform. This period is, in fact, the dissolution of the ego's motives. Your old self, with its list of desires and fears, is losing its grip on the steering wheel. This laziness or lack of will is a symptom of your body and soul detoxing from a lifetime of expectations that were not your own. It is a transitional phase that clears the ground so that an authentic purpose can finally emerge. Therefore, instead of fighting against this state, the invitation is to honor it. See it not as a defect, but as a rite of passage. You are vacating your inner space so that something much larger can inhabit it. It is a process that great thinkers, like Carl Jung, compared to one of nature's most beautiful transformations. It is the psychological death of who you thought you were, in order to be reborn. This feeling of falling apart is not a new phenomenon. In fact, it was brilliantly mapped by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. He called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating all parts of yourself to become a whole, complete individual. Jung gave us a perfect metaphor for this phase of pause and emptiness, an image that can bring you immense comfort right now. Imagine a caterpillar. Its entire life is driven by a single instinct: to consume, to grow, to move forward. It lives in a two-dimensional world, crawling on leaves, focused only on the next step and the next meal. This was our life, driven by the ego, focused on acquiring, on meeting external goals, on following the path presented to us as the only one possible. Then, at a certain point, an irresistible call leads it to enclose itself in a chrysalis. And here the unthinkable happens. It doesn't just reorganize itself, it completely dissolves. The caterpillar turns into a soup of cells, a primordial chaos without form or identity. This goo is your sacred pause. It is your disorienting calm. It is the state where everything you thought you were must cease to exist to make way for the new. Our modern culture, obsessed with productivity and action, would look inside the chrysalis and call it a failure. It would label this phase as laziness, stagnation, or regression. But what Jung teaches us is that this is the most sacred moment of the transformation. It is not a bug in the system, it is the system itself in its deepest wisdom. It is an initiation, not an interruption, because it is only from this total dissolution, this surrender to the unknown, that the butterfly can begin to form. It is not an improved caterpillar, it is an entirely new being, with a new way of seeing and interacting with the world. The drive that moved it before has completely disappeared, giving way to a very different kind of motivation, one that comes not from hunger, but from flight. Just like the butterfly, you emerge from this transformation and realize that the caterpillar's old hunger is gone. The ambitions that once seemed to be the center of your universe, that promotion, that recognition, that life goal, now feel like they belong to someone else, to another story. That brute force pushing you to win is no longer there. This is the death of the ego's ambition, an event that can be as liberating as it is terrifying. The ego's drive was loud and anxious. It was a voice that came from the outside in, constantly measuring, comparing, and demanding. It was fueled by external validation, by society's applause, and by the fear of not being good enough. Acting from that place was a constant performance, an exhausting effort to prove your worth to a world that never seemed satisfied, and neither were you. What is born in place of this noise is something much more subtle, almost like a whisper. It is the motivation that comes from the soul. It doesn't push, it invites, it doesn't scream, it resonates. This new driving force doesn't ask, "What's in it for me?" but rather, "Does this feel true to me?" It is a movement that springs from a deep sense of alignment and inner resonance, a calm certainty that needs no witnesses. The huge difference is the source of energy. The ego's ambition sought to fill an inner void with outer achievements. The soul's impulse, on the other hand, flows from a place of inner fullness to express itself in the world. One seeks validation, the other seeks expression. One leads to exhaustion, the other leads to sustainable energy. You stop striving to prove yourself and start simply being yourself. Learning to listen to and trust this new impulse is the great work now. We have been conditioned to respond to loud alarms, not soft melodies. To truly tune into this frequency of the soul, we must first clear the internal static. This means having the courage to look at the parts of ourselves that have been neglected, our pains and shadows, which often block this new and authentic connection. To be able to hear the soul's whisper, we must first have the courage to face what is causing most of the internal noise, our own shadow. The shadow, a term also popularized by Jung, is not the evil within us. It is simply all the parts of our personality that have been repressed, rejected, or denied. It's our anger, our sadness, our envy, our unmet needs, everything we learn to hide in order to be loved and accepted. This is where many get lost in modern spirituality, falling into the trap of spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. And authentic awakening is not about floating above your problems on a cloud of good vibes only. On the contrary, it is about gaining the strength and awareness to finally go down into our own dark basement and turn on the light. Ignoring the shadow doesn't make it go away. It only makes it stronger in the dark. Doing shadow work may sound scary, but in practice it is an act of deep self-compassion. It's giving your pain permission to manifest without judgment. It's welcoming the anger you always swallowed and asking what boundary it is trying to protect. It's acknowledging your neediness and finally giving yourself the care you expected from others. It is a process of sitting with what is uncomfortable and offering it acceptance. The goal of this work is not to eliminate these parts of yourself, but to integrate them. Your anger contains power, your sadness contains depth, and your vulnerability holds the key to connection. Integrating the shadow is like finding lost children and bringing them back home into your being. By doing this, you don't become perfect, you become whole. You reclaim the energy that was trapped in repression. This integration is the foundation, the bedrock of a true and lasting transformation. Without this work, our spiritual growth is like a house built on quicksand. By embracing and integrating all parts of yourself, you build a foundation of solid rock. It is from this wholeness that the old, loud, and desperate ambition can finally give way to a new form of motivation: devotion. This work is deep and intensely personal. I'm curious to hear from you. What is one part of the shadow our culture taught you to hide? Share your experience in the comments below. Let's make this a space for real, honest conversation. With the foundation of your wholeness rebuilt through shadow integration, the energy that was once ambition transforms. It doesn't disappear, but purifies itself, becoming something much deeper and more sustainable: devotion. Ambition was a bonfire, burning fast, high, and demanding constant fuel. Devotion is like an ember, a constant quiet warmth that emanates from the center of your being and warms you from the inside out. The motivation born from devotion is silent. It doesn't need to announce its arrival or its plans. It is a deep, internal call to express your truth in the world, not to impress the world with your skills. You may feel called to write, to care for plants, to listen to a friend, or to build a project. The scale of the action becomes irrelevant. What matters is the alignment and sincerity behind it. This is the fundamental shift from acting out of pressure to acting from presence. Ambition puts you under the pressure of time, competition, and results. Devotion invites you to be fully present in the act itself, finding meaning in the process, not just at the finish line. Your actions cease to be an attempt to control the future and become a dance with the present moment. When devotion becomes your guide, the need for external validation simply dissolves. You no longer act in search of applause, likes, or recognition. Your greatest reward is the resonance you feel when acting in accordance with your soul, the sense of integrity that comes from being a channel for your own truth. You trade the need to impress others for the joy of expressing yourself. This new way of operating is incredibly energetic and sustainable because it doesn't depend on external and finite sources of approval. You stop leaking energy trying to be someone you're not. By living from this place of devotion and presence, you begin to notice that life communicates with you differently, no longer through cold logic, but through a much richer and more subtle language. If you're finding real value in this journey from ambition to devotion and want to dive deeper into this way of authentic living, please take a second to support the channel. Like this video, subscribe, and be sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. By living from devotion, you fine-tune your perception to this new, subtle language of life. Your deeper self, the totality of your being, begins to communicate not just through logical thought, but through symbols. Your guides are now dreams, synchronicities, and a sharp intuition. You learn to read the world not as a series of concrete facts, but as a living poem full of hidden meaning. This manifests in very practical ways in your daily life. It's that animal that repeatedly crosses your path, the song that plays on the radio with the exact answer to your question, or the book that accidentally falls off a shelf in front of you. These are no longer random coincidences. They become conversations, winks from the universe, showing you that you are connected to a flow of intelligence much greater than your rational mind. Your dreams gain new depth, transforming from nightly noise into rich dialogues with your unconscious. And above all, you begin to trust that inner knowing, that calm certainty that wells up in your chest without any logical explanation. It is your soul's compass, pointing to your true north, even if the map in your mind is blank. Trusting this, knowing is a radical act of self-reliance. This new way of navigating life marks the transition from a posture of domination to one of participation. The ego wants to control, to plan every step and force reality to fit its expectations. The soul in turn understands that life is a dance. You stop trying to master the river and learn to flow with it, responding to its currents and using its wisdom to guide your boat, rather than fighting the tide. It is here that you finally move from a life defined by doing to a life that blossoms from being. Your main task is no longer to produce incessantly, but to cultivate your state of being. The actions born from this place are more potent and aligned. To the logical mind, this surrender to the flow, this apparent passivity, can seem like a complete reversal of everything that is right, a true paradox. This feeling that your life has made a 180-degree turn, where everything you valued has been replaced by its opposite, has a name in Jungian psychology: Enantiodromia. It is a universal principle stating that anything, when taken to its extreme, inevitably flips into its contrary, like a pendulum that upon reaching its highest point on one side is forced by gravity itself to swing to the other. Think of your previous life, a relentless pursuit of more, an extreme effort by the ego to control, conquer, and achieve. You took ambition, logic, and action to their absolute limit. According to the law of Enantiodromia, that energy had nowhere to go but to convert into its opposite. Your frantic striving has transformed into a profound stillness. Your need to do has given way to a call to simply be. Our society, which only values the climb, sees this movement as a fall, a failure. But this is one of the deepest truths of awakening. This descent is sacred. It is not a step backward, but a movement toward balance. You are not falling, you are grounding. It is the psyche, in its infinite wisdom, seeking to compensate for an imbalance that had become unsustainable for your soul. This reversal is not a punishment, but the self-healing mechanism of your soul. It was necessary to release control to find true faith. It was necessary to empty the mind to hear the wisdom of the heart. It was necessary to descend from the mountain of ambition to discover the fertility of the valley of presence. This descent is not the end of the journey, but the essential condition that enables an authentic and truly integrated rebirth. By understanding and accepting this natural law of the psyche, you stop fighting against the current. You realize that this stillness is not your final destination, but a vital point of readjustment. It is from this new center, from this place of balance achieved through reversal, that a flame can be rekindled. Not the desperate flame of the ego, but a new, serene and whole flame that burns with a different kind of power. After the stillness, after the reversal, something new begins to emerge from your balanced center. It is not a return of the old ambition with its urgency and anxiety. It is something much more subtle, a new motivation that feels like a gentle hum of alignment. It is life sprouting again, not with the force of an explosion, but with the quiet resilience of a seed germinating after the rain, in its own right time. This is the fundamental difference between being ego-driven and being soul-powered. The ego pushed you with the whip of fear and lack. The soul draws you with the call of fullness and purpose. This new flame is not fueled by the need to prove your worth, but by the desire to express the worth you already know you possess. The source of energy has shifted from external and finite to internal and infinite. You learn to recognize motivation not as a shout, but as this hum of alignment. It is a physical and energetic sensation that this is right, this is my path. The joy is no longer in the final prize, but in the very resonance of each step taken in harmony with your truth. Acting from this place doesn't drain your energy. On the contrary, it generates more energy and vitality. The actions born from this flame are by nature sustainable and heartfelt. Whether in your creation, your service to others, or your connections, everything becomes an extension of your heart. You no longer burn out because you are no longer performing or forcing. You simply allow your energy to flow where it is genuinely called, resulting in work and relationships that are more authentic and rewarding. This is the new flame of wholeness. It is not just one part of you that is motivated, it is your entire being, mind, body, and spirit, operating in harmony. This flame does not blind you with the promise of a bright future, but illuminates your path, step by step, in the now. And the final journey is not to use this light to find a treasure out there, but to recognize that the light itself is the treasure. And so, we arrive at the great secret of this journey. The void, the dissolution, the shadow work, the reversal, none of it was to get you to a new level of external success. The journey was never outward, it was always inward. The final destination is not a place, but a state of being. It is the reclamation of your inner truth, the return to the authentic essence that was always there, patiently waiting beneath the layers of who you were not. Living from this truth means the performance is over. The exhaustion of upholding a false identity to please, to be accepted, or to fit in comes to an end. The masks can finally come off, and the relief this brings is indescribable. You no longer need to spend your precious life force managing the perception of others. Your only task is to honor and express the person you truly are in every moment. Your actions from now on are born from a wellspring of peace and truth. You no longer act out of anxiety or a sense of obligation, but because the action is a natural reflection of your inner state of peace. Your decisions become simpler and clearer because they are filtered through the most important question. Is this in alignment with my truth? Your life becomes the outer manifestation of your inner peace. This is the new paradigm of success. It is not measured by achievements, possessions, or social status, but by the quality of your presence, the depth of your peace, and the courage to be authentic. Success ceases to be a frantic search for something missing and becomes the constant appreciation of the fullness that already exists within you. It's the shift from a life that looks good on the outside to one that feels true on the inside. Therefore, the journey of spiritual awakening, with all its confusing and challenging phases, is ultimately a journey back home to yourself. It is not about becoming someone better, but about having the courage to unbecome everything that isn't you. It is about reclaiming your simplest, purest truth. And from that place, finally, simply live. Thank you for walking this path with me today. If this message resonated with your journey, please show your support by liking, subscribing, and perhaps sharing this video with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay true to your path.